What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Big Five Pod, episode number 53. No guest today, just the two of us. Sorry to disappoint, but you guys know us, you love us. We got the same old stuff here. So, yeah. Without further ado, of course, sitting next to me is Jake Copestick. And I'm Kyle Morello. But Cope, how you doing?
I'm doing good, and I know you are too. I have my Union shirt on. You
Yes,
just got back
sir.
from Nashville last night, and Kyle, a little birdie told me that team down in Nashville had quite the home winning streak going into last night. Big 2-0 win for the
Yeah.
Union. Good win for you guys. Keep it rolling, keep it going. I don't know. Can you make any more like post? I know. Obviously, MLS postseason's like very much attainable, and you guys expect to be there. But can you plan any like other like cups or what's going on there?
Well, postseason, I mean, at this point, I've only been with the Union for 2.5 months, but at this point in the Union's history, uh, we are expected to be not even just in the postseason, but probably hosting most of the games in the postseason that come through us. Not the case so far this year. Right now, after Wednesday night's win against Nashville, moved up to fourth place in the East. Only 1 point out of second, though. So we're technically tied for fourth or third or whatever. But regardless, yeah, I mean we're still pretty far behind Cincinnati. They're killing it. Slipped up a little bit more lately, but that's because they have a couple people who were with the USA team in the Gold Cup. They lost also on Wednesday night to Panama. But yeah, I mean we're a good team. Haven't been playing like it that much lately. We've been without a couple guys. But huge win in Nashville on Wednesday night. That crowd was definitely rowdy. Definitely were throwing things on the field, which I didn't love.
Uh-oh.
After what's his face? Excuse me, Daniel Gazdag's second PK goal. Um, in my opinion, it wasn't the best officiated game, but it happens. We had a heyday softball game today, actually two with the playoffs. I didn't really think those games were very well officiated either, but we won both, so can't complain there. But yeah, Union, it's a fun time to be a Union fan. So appreciate you wearing the shirt. I got the scarf here that I hung up. New addition to the new room, which you guys are seeing for the first time. I'm very excited about that. I live in the basement of my place, so it's very cool down here. I get to sleep cool. Sleeping cold is the best. So yeah. Enough about the room though. Enough about the Union. As much as I would love to talk about the boys in blue, we've got some Big Five basketball to talk about. So why don't we get right into it? Obviously, not a ton going on in the middle of July when it comes to Big Five basketball news, but there's some things. Definitely one thing big, which we're going to get into first here. Another Villanova Ash is heading to LaSalle. Former Villanova Senior Associate Athletic Director and Chief Athletics Operating Officer Ash Puri is LaSalle's new Vice President of Athletics and Recreation and Director of Athletics. So what does all this mean? Well, this role was left vacant by Brian Baptiste, who left LaSalle for University of Miami, the U. But listen, Puri is more than qualified to take over this role left vacant by Brian Baptiste. Since joining Villanova in 2019, he's been responsible for overseeing the athletic department's annual operating and capital budgets, manages contract negotiations, facilities, tickets, sports medicine, travel, equipment, anything you can really think of for an athletic program. He's the one in charge of that. Also, NIL initiatives too. Obviously, it's something we've talked a lot about on this show, specifically with Villanova. So he oversaw all of that. Previously, VP of Strategy and Business Ops for the Oakland Athletics, oversaw about 60 million annually in revenue. Was also the Senior AD and Chief Revenue Officer at Cal Berkeley. Saw about 45 million total revenue, so he's dealing with a lot of money here. He's going to be overseeing the renovations of Tom Gola, which is pretty cool. And I'm going to let you talk about a lot of that because I know you love Tom Gola. Also previously worked for the New Jersey Nets and my New York Jets. So Cope, Ash Puri, I think, is more than qualified to take over this position. It's exciting for LaSalle and LaSalle fans to have a new voice, a new leadership involved. What do you make of this?
So you have to be happy if you're a LaSalle fan for sure, given everything that Ash Puri's done at Villanova and previous stops as well. But I want to talk about his time at Villanova because he was a sport administrator for men's basketball, and you mentioned all those things that he helped out with. And he's going to LaSalle, where although you don't have as much resources as you do at a Villanova, The one thing that for years they've been talking about is this arena renovation. It's been going on for a while. You look at other A10 schools, Dayton, Rhode Island's getting a practice facility that's going to be done pretty soon. Not done already. They got to catch up here because you walk in and look, I like Tom Gold Arena, but you walk in there, it's hot, it's above the pool, and it's got the dimensions of like a high school gym. I like going to games. I think it's a cool spot, but they know that they need a bigger arena. They need a nicer arena. Probably, I think the plans are to switch it and have the court horizontal to what it is now, or flip the sides so you can actually have seats on all four sides. Because something that Ash Puri's done in the past is deal with hospitality seating and deal with premium seating that a new arena like that with seats on four sides would allow LaSalle to do. But there's a lot that's going on here with that. And it's not as easy just to say, oh, yeah, we have the money, we'll get some boosters, or, we'll get a financial plan in place to build the arena. There's one gym on campus there. When I spent my freshman year at LaSalle, there was only a couple of hours on a Sunday where you could go in and play pickup, and then the volleyball team would come kick you off, or men's or women's basketball would come in. There's one gym there for all the teams. So they got to figure out a plan. Like, if they renovate the whole building, and not to mention, like I said, you have the freaking pool underneath it, which is awesome, by the way. I think it's great. Obviously, it creates a lot of challenges when you want to renovate an arena like that. But they can't displace any of these teams. You look at Villanova when Finneran Pavilion got renovated. They went to the Wells Fargo Center, but they also have the ability in the fan base to sell out Wells Fargo. They play a bunch of games there anyway during the season, and they have for quite a few years now. Do they move to the Palestra? I don't see that being feasible for them to move to Wells Fargo because I don't know how much they would sell. I don't know how much that makes sense on both sides. There's a lot going on here with the arena. But in terms of NIL, which we just saw LaSalle, they now have their own NIL collective that they just started that we had talked about a month ago, maybe. Ash Puri had his hands in a lot of that stuff. And he's in the pro level, at the college level, in at Cal Berkeley, in a Power Five, a true Power Five conference, he's dealt with all this. So with his work experience, what he brings from Villanova as a guy who now he understands the Big Five. I was reading LaSalle's press clippings, and shout out to them because they're responsible for all this good info we got on Ash. When he was able to talk to all the other administrators from other schools, he got a better understanding of the Big Five, and he understands just how important this is to LaSalle and the Philadelphia basketball community as a whole. So you have to be happy with this hire. There's a lot going on there. I mean, during COVID, they cut a bunch of sports. The baseball team got cut, which I know a lot of people up in arms. Had a lot of people up in arms, but got to like the hire. Ton of experience here. Comes from a successful basketball program. Knows what it takes, especially facility-wise, is something he emphasized to put into having a successful team and how big it is in this state of where college athletics is. So you have to be happy with the hire here. I think he's going to do well, and I think this arena renovation is going to get officially announced probably next month. I would think before the season starts, they actually have a plan. But like I said, are they going to displace teams? They said they still want to play there. Well, then you have to shut down one side of the court. You're not going to have those seats for a while. You're going to take a hit. There's a lot of factors here when it comes to LaSalle. It's unique kind of just to them. But I think Ash Puri's the guy for the job, brings a wealth of experience. I think it's a really good hire. And I'm eager to see what the plans are for this. I've seen a bunch of renderings from Gola Boys and a couple other people. But I'm eager to see how this plays out. And it sounds like he was hired just to get this thing started, very, very early in his tenure.
Yeah, listen, the Goal Boys are probably very excited about this. I mean, they've been clamoring for an upgraded Tom Gola for quite some time now. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely challenges, like you mentioned. It's they don't have the same type of endowment that probably all the other Big Five schools do. So it's hard. They don't have as much money in. But if there's someone who seems like they know how to create revenue and knows what to do with the revenue that they do have, it's Ash Puri. So very much looking forward to what he can do for the Explorers. Moving on to his former school, Villanova. Cope, this is really, really interesting. And, if you are from this area, not even just the Philadelphia area, but the greater Philadelphia area, Villanova buying Cabrini was definitely something I don't think I saw coming. I don't know if you saw coming. I don't know if a lot of people in this area saw coming, but Cabrini is a local college. I cannot tell you exactly where it is off the top of my head right now, but I know it's near us. But they bought Cabrini. Cabrini's gonna cease operations after this academic year. Villanova's going to take ownership of the land after that. They'll offer counseling services, to help Cabrini students find transfer options and whatnot. And also LaSalle and Gwen and Mercy, which is a local school, too, have offered to take some of Cabrini's students potentially, if they would like to. Now, obviously, this isn't just related to basketball, but it's definitely something that needs to be talked about because it's one of our Big Five schools doing something like this, and helping out Cabrini and saving them, but also, transitioning that out from Cabrini to Villanova. So Cope, as a local guy too, just like me, what do you think of this?
So I hate to say it about Cabrini and some of these small D3 schools that the writing was on the wall almost when COVID hit, but that's a big reason for why this was. I mean, when you have a small school like that, and that used to be Cabrini College recently, they got university status. But with COVID and when you're such a small school like that, it's got 1,800, 2,000 students, it's just tough to make up and not with a donor base and an alumni base that these bigger school D1 schools have. It's just hard to bring in money and come back from that when COVID happened. So it's unfortunate because obviously they had a pretty good program there as far as basketball goes. I know Mike Doyle, who I know from LaSalle, was a player there. He's a Cabrini alum. Our buddy Ty Dalbert's a Cabrini alum. My cousin Jill graduated pretty recently. So it's I've never I can't remember seeing anything like this in this area off the top of my head. So it's weird to say, but unfortunately, Kyle, this might become a thing you see more often. You think of how many universities we have in this area. And Cabrini, by the way, I believe it's Radnor, right around the corner from Villanova.
Yeah, I was
Literally,
gonna say,
it's a
I
mile
know
and a
it's
half down the
close.
street.
Yeah.
Yeah, right around there. But you look at that area, and Rosemont College is there, and Eastern University, right? And Haverford
Bryn
College is right there. Bryn Mawr. There's so many of these small schools that you don't know what kind of position they're in or how well they're doing during COVID if they've had conversations like this before with other schools in the area. I don't know what they're going to do with the land. It sounds like Nova's going to preserve all the buildings and the history and the tradition that Cabrini has, which is cool to see. But I think I might have heard something about maybe a new law school being put up there. Like they're going to preserve what they can, but this is very much going to be Nova's space. So I hope it's not a thing that you see regularly. But like I said, during COVID, I mean, even like LaSalle was going through a lot of financial trouble during COVID too. Like, and even a couple of years later, some of these schools they just have trouble pulling themselves out of it. So, athletics wise, I don't really know what this means. I guess if you really, really wanted a new football stadium at Villanova, maybe you have some new space for one. But yeah, in terms of athletics, I don't really know how much of an impact this has. But certainly sad to see that go. Especially when people or like have family that went there, and it's like, well, is that degree going to mean as much if it's a defunct school? That's definitely not the case. But I hope all these students get, they get. It's nice that LaSalle and Gwen and Mercy are offering to take some kids because that's got to be an unfortunate spot, especially if you're like an incoming freshman and you get hit with this, and then you gotta find another place to be for 3-4 years or do some additional school. So I hope every undergrad student that's there can get on their feet because this is something that's completely out of their control at all. So don't really know what this means. I guess we'll find out more like once Cabrini ceases their operations, we'll see exactly what Villanova is going to do with this land. But yeah, unfortunate for the Cabrini University community, I guess. This kind of came out of nowhere too. I didn't know they were struggling as badly as they were, but it's kind of everybody, man. Across every single sector, every single business. Even though COVID isn't a thing anymore, I guess people are still feeling the effects of it. That trickles down to college and universities.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely COVID affected a lot. And I can't say I was expecting this, but at least for Cabrini students and I guess Villanova students too, this will be a benefit that they're really close to each other, the two schools. But it does suck. Another school in our area that, not that it was a big school or anything, but obviously we've known people who have gone to Cabrini and graduated from Cabrini. It's sad. It's really sad to see, but I'm sure Villanova will make good of the land and buildings and whatnot that they're acquiring, and I'm excited to see what will happen while also being sad for Cabrini University. All right, on a more positive note, Khalif Wyatt is back at Temple. No, he's not stepping on the basketball court, though I wish. I miss watching him play. He was actually hired as the director of player development for the Owls. So obviously you guys know Khalif Wyatt, but let me break him down a little bit more for you. He's from Norristown, Pennsylvania, Coke, right up the road from you and I. Was an assistant coach last season at Westchester University, coaching Big Five TBT for the second year in a row. Obviously, you remember his time at Temple as a player. Senior year, he was phenomenal. A10 player of the year, averaged 20 and a half points per game. Temple made the tournament that year as an 8 seed, I believe it was. Beat NC State and then lost a super, super close game to the number 1 seed, I think maybe even overall in that tournament, which was led by Indiana, of course, led by Todd McCrean as the coach. They had Victor Oladipo, who's the number 2 pick that year in the draft. Cody Zeller, obviously, was a first-round pick, either that draft or the draft after. I'm forgetting exactly, to the Hornets there. But that was a loaded team, and Temple almost pulled that off to go to the Sweet 16. I was rooting for them crazy, and they didn't pull it off. But he's back at Temple, director of player development. I think you can't go wrong when you hire someone who is a former star from the area, helping develop players to become the best version of themselves. So I think this is a home run hire here. Cope, what do you think?
Yeah, I gotta echo everything you said for sure. Not only Temple's very own, but how about Norristown, Pennsylvania's very own? My mom's like entire side of the family is from
Montgomery
there, which is
County.
pretty cool. Yeah, Montgomery County got public school guy too, not a guy that
Yeah.
went to Roman or any of these places. He played it at Norristown High. I think the biggest takeaway for me here is, when we went to Adam Fisher's press conference, he was very adamant about former players. Like, don't text me, don't call me, show up to practice. Well, you're going to have a guy that's going to be at every practice now, which is going to be pretty cool. And, that next step in trying to unite the former players and build relationships with them and get them back around the program. And he hired one. So I think this is great for everybody involved. And another like really key point here that I think is huge in this era in college basketball, if you don't play, you have a bad year, things get tough, you transfer. When Khalif Wyatt was at Temple, him and Fran Dunphy were button heads, but by the time his career was over, such an accomplished player, one of the best Temple had ever had, A10 player of the year, like you said. They almost beat a team that had 2 top 5 picks in Victor Oladipo and Cody Zeller. He is like the ultimate role model for these guys. A guy that, like I said, was button heads with Fran Dunphy. They didn't have a great relationship. It was rocky. He stuck it out. He continued to get better. Had a way better relationship with Fran Dunphy that they still have to this day. He stuck things out, was a better person, a better basketball player because of it. And now to have him come back and be able to bestow that all upon, not only the players this year, but for years to come. Kyle, there's not a way I can slice this where I don't say exactly what you said and say this is a home run hire. I think everybody wins here. This is a great hire. He's got some coaching experience. He's at D2 Westchester, going to coach Big Five TBT, and then he'll be right back on North Broad. I think they're going to hold Big Five TBT is going to hold their practices there. I know I saw Broad Street Birds was there today getting some work in, but he's going to coach Big Five TBT, and then he'll be part of the Owls family once again. So great for everybody involved. Alumni, fans, the team now. Awesome for everybody. You can't say anything besides this is a great hire.
Absolutely. And I don't even think I really need to say anything more. You kind of, to keep with the home run theme, you knocked it out of the park there. It's a good thing. So very happy for Temple, very happy for Khalif Wyatt. Keeping with Temple, but moving on to a different part of our show, a little scheduling news here. Temple will be playing Albany at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn on December 10th as part of a larger event. This was reported by John Rothstein with College Hoops Today. No official announcement has been made yet, so keep an eye out for that. But what John Rothstein was telling us that some of the matchups would be the other matchups. St. John's and Boston College will be playing each other, Colorado, Miami, and Fordham and North Texas. So it's pretty good matchups there. Especially St. John's being in New York there. That should be pretty fun. But according to Sports Reference, this would be the Owls' first ever meeting with the Great Danes, which is very interesting. And of course, Bobby Jordan, Temple's assistant coach, spent last season as assistant coach with the Great Danes, was 2-2, filling in as an interim head coach too. So some history here between the assistant and the Great Danes last year, but between the two teams, it's a blank slate. Never played each other. What do you think about not only this matchup, but the event that's been reported on as a whole.
Yeah, so it definitely is a cool event. I wonder if this is going to be the Hoop Hall Classic. I was actually at the Barclays Center December 10th last year, and it was the Hoop Hall Classic. So it was Iona versus St. Bonaventure to start. Second game was Virginia Tech, Oklahoma State. Headliner was Maryland, who was ranked number 13 against Tennessee, who was ranked number 7. And the last game was smaller game was UMass and Hofstra. So if I'm looking at this right, I would think that Fordham North Texas probably gets the first game, and then maybe the Owls get the nightcap. So, but yeah, really, really cool event, especially for Temple to go up there. They played the Barclays Center a couple times. They were there for the Empire Classic this year, and believe they were the year before as well. So cool, they'll get to go back up there again. But a team that they should beat for sure in Albany from the America East. You know, there was the whole Dwayne Killing situation. That's why Bobby Jordan was filling in last year. He's still the head coach. He had to pay a fine, and then he served the suspension that he did as Bobby Jordan filled in. But yeah, game they should win, and I believe Ryan Daly is still an assistant coach up there. So pretty cool Big Five clash there. If we have to find a little nugget for you, that Ryan Daly's doing his coaching thing up there too. So yeah, pretty cool for both sides. You never played each other before, but as part of a larger event, you know, probably a national TV spot for Temple as well. Good on them for going up there in a game that, you know, I'm going to cross my fingers when I say this, but they should win.
Knock on wood. Knock on wood. Yeah, I mean, they just should definitely win that, but the event seems pretty interesting. So hopefully we find out some more information about that soon. Sticking with the Owls, Cope, we've had some history with Maryland Eastern Shore. We're playing them again this year, and I am praying that the result last year is not the same result this year, but UMES, $75,000 they will be receiving for this bye game per at D1 Docket on Twitter. Of course, the result last year I'm referring to was an 86-78 loss at the Liacouras Center for the Owls. I see you holding back a type of smile there that's not like an actual genuine smile. It's a we were embarrassed on our home floor in a bye game smile last year before ripping off like a 7-2 record in conference play to start conference play. This was the last game, I think, before the calendars turned into the new year. If I'm remembering right, at least into the non-con or from non-conference to conference. But it was embarrassing, and we definitely should have won this game, and we lost by 8. So, Cope, round 2 of this, what do we think?
Well, you know what's the worst that can happen when you play
Can't get worse
Maryland
than
Eastern
last
Shore
year.
at home and you pay them a bunch of money. So I hope they better win this one, man. 2 years in a row, UMES has your number. That's certainly not good. But yeah, that game last year was a disaster. And you know, you mentioned the good streak they had in the start of conference play, even with Damian Dunn missing a couple games with a concussion, and it's just like it boggles your mind with like how inconsistent that team was. They'll lose to Wagner, and then they beat Villanova when they were ranked. They beat Rutgers. They lost in overtime to Vanderbilt, who made a late run. Vanderbilt was formidable last year. Like, you know, if the season there was a week or two left in the season and they get a couple more games, maybe they could sneak into the tournament in one of the playing games. But then they lose this one. Like, this was a crusher, man. It's like, okay, we got one more tune up at home before conference play. And even though they lost and they started conference play out well, like nothing made sense with this team last year. Like it was just they couldn't be consistent the last few years, but especially last year. So hopefully they win this one, and hopefully UMES is not taking the money, winning a game at Liacouras Center, and then running off, because that would be terrible if they came to Liacouras Center 2 straight years in the guarantee game and left the Owls with what is sure to be like a Q4 loss. So hopefully we can win this one. I saw this and I was like, oh God. Of all the teams you could have got a guarantee against,
Right.
it had to be Maryland Eastern Shore.
Listen, if you're Maryland Eastern Shore, I'm telling you this now, you get one thing. You either get the money or you get the win. You can't get both.
They
got both last year. You can't let them do it again. You're giving them the money. You can't give them the win on your home floor. It's that simple. They're probably, like you said, probably going to be another Q4 team this year. You can't let it happen. If you have any self-respect as a basketball collegiate organization, you cannot lose this game. No offense to UMES. I mean, I'm sure you guys are nice and you're fine. And you beat us last year, so I guess we're a little salty about that as Owl alumni here. But yeah, man, cannot let it happen again. Cannot let it happen again. And we're going to move on from that. Going to move on to the Drexel Dragons here, playing at Old Dominion this year, where they opened the season last year at the DAC, not at Old Dominion. They opened at the DAC. They played Old Dominion, won 71-59. Amari Williams had very close to a triple-double, 14-9. Coltrane Washington at 15 points. And these teams have some history too. Drexel is 10-12 all time against the Monarchs. So Cope, going into this one, running this back for a little home and home here for the Dragons. What do we make of this?
Yeah, I think this should be another spot where a Big Five team gets a win here. The game last year opened up the season. Good game for Amari Williams, and I think he's going to be a huge key in this game. He's their best player. He's going to be key in every game for them. But I expect a huge breakout year for him coming up this year. I think he's going to be one of the best players in the CAA, one of the best shot blockers in all of college basketball, one of the best defenders in all of college basketball. And because of that, I think they will beat Old Dominion when they have to go there. Old Dominion will be a little bit better. They just got RJ Blakeney from Dayton, who from watching the A10 last couple of years, come to know him. 6 points and 2.5 boards, played 30 games with the Flyers last year. And again, we want to tie in some Big Five here. Jamal Robinson, former assistant coach at LaSalle, did 2 seasons there. And he took the job at Old Dominion. It was a little later. It was about August of last year. He took the job to go back down there to go play for his college coach, which is pretty cool. So got to loop the Big Five in somehow here. Jamal Robinson will be on the other bench, former LaSalle guy. But yeah, I mean, it's tough when you're Drexel and you have to put a schedule together, and you play you play by games, and then you try and find teams like Old Dominion and Conference USA that are like somewhat compatible and somewhat similar to the competition you play in. So they'll run it back. They'll go there. They'll give them their return game, and it should be a good game between two mid-major teams.
Yeah, absolutely should be. Not the 12 points is like a blowout. Fairly comfortable win for Drexel last year, but this should definitely be a good one this year. So excited to see that. One more little scheduling note here before we get into kind of a more overarching schedule note. LaSalle will be hosting Loyola, Maryland on December 6th per Rocco Miller. LaSalle's fared pretty well against Loyola, Maryland, 6-1 all time. And Loyola wasn't all that great last year, 13-20. And they also lost Cam Spencer to Rutgers. So maybe not looking as good this year for Loyola, Maryland. LaSalle keeping a lot of players this year. So it should be an interesting one too. Hopefully they can push that record to 7-1 against Loyola, Maryland. But what do you think of this matchup coming up on December 6th?
So this is another bye game. And LaSalle did pretty well with the bye games last year, except for Lafayette kind of ran him off the court in Tom Gola. So hopefully they can take care of a bye game. And again, I just like that phrase, take the money and run. So hopefully you have Loyola not taking the money and running back to Baltimore. But they got to beat this team. For a Patriot League team that's not very good, Cam Spencer, very good defender, by the way, he leaves and their defense was atrocious last year. And if that's going to be the case this year as well, you have to beat this team and run up the score on them. So you can't lose bye games. They're the epitome of brutality, as we know. You can't lose these, but you got to fill out your schedule somehow. So come on down, Loyola, Maryland Greyhounds. Maybe Tom Gola will be a construction site while you're here, but come on down for a game. So hopefully they beat them and we don't have to run this back because that Lafayette game was bad last year.
It was.
I mean, they got run off the court and they couldn't miss from 3. But definitely an inferior opponent. Why they're paying him some money to come up here, but has to be a win here. And I believe LaSalle's schedule, if it's not set already, they got another maybe 1 or 2 more games to book, but they're kind of packed here. And they can worry about hopefully getting some players in because they only have 10 scholarships right now. And there's certainly room to bring in, another body or 2 if you need it. But regardless, even if they stay at 10, should be a win for them.
Yeah, I mean they definitely they've had a quieter offseason on the player front. But this should definitely be a win. Hopefully we're not eating our words in a few months here, or in about 5 months here, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Speaking of LaSalle, and we're going to loop St. Joe's into this as well, the A10 schedule, Cope, was released, the conference schedule. So we're going to run down some opponents here. Might take me a second, so bear with me here. It's going to be a lot of information coming out of all of you. But we're gonna go with the South first since we were just talking about them. Some common opponents that have both home and away. George Washington, UMass, Rhode Island, and of course St. Joe's. They will also be hosting Dayton, George Mason, the Bonnies, St. Louis, and VCU, which are all pretty good teams. So a really good thing that they're going to want to host them as opposed to traveling to them. Those are not easy places to play. They will be traveling to Davidson, Duquesne, Fordham, Loyola Chicago, and Richmond. So I think a pretty favorable schedule for them in terms of home and away draw. Obviously, you can't pick the opponents because you're in the conference, you play everybody. But we'll go over the South first here, Cope. What do you think of this?
So we'll get to St. Joe's because I wanted to say that I think LaSalle definitely got a better draw than St. Joe's did. You look at the teams that they're going to play twice. George Washington surprised a lot of people last year. They still have James Bishop, and he's going to be able to put up points in a hurry, but they don't have Brendan Adams. They don't have Noel Brown, who transferred actually to St. Bonaventure in conference. So they're not going to be as good, and I think that's a team that they could be competitive with. And they were competitive, but they split the series against them. I thought they could have won the game down in Foggy Bottom. So I like that's an opponent that they get twice because I think those are certainly two winnable games. UMass is, pretty much did a 180 with their roster. That could be a rebuilding team that they could beat, and they did beat, I believe, twice. I know they beat them at UMass. I think they actually got them both times. And then Rhode Island, who they beat 2 out of 3 times, of course, playing them in the first round of the A10 tournament. I don't think Rhode Island's going to be very good. If UMass did a 180 with their roster, Rhode Island did like a 720. They might have like 3 guys coming back. And then Joseph Appalau was coming back, and he was hurt pretty much all of this. So to get UMass and Rhode Island that are still second-year head coaches and Archie Miller and Frank Martin, pretty much new rosters, could be a team that you could beat. And then, hey, St. Joe's right now, look, on paper, they are more talented than LaSalle. They also have more scholarship players right now, obviously. But that doesn't matter. These are when any Big 5 game, but especially when LaSalle and St. Joe's are playing each other, it's anybody's game. It's anybody's game, and they certainly could win one, if not both of these. I feel like they usually split, and I can never tell who's going to win because I would have thought that LaSalle would have won at Tom Goal Arena, and then I didn't think LaSalle would have beat St. Joe's at Hagan Arena the way that St. Joe's have been playing. But that's anybody's game. But I liked at home. They don't have to go to Dayton. Playing at UD Arena is tough. And then, of course, they get to host VCU instead of going to play at the Siegel Center. And then going up to St. Bonaventure as well has been tough for them, even though they won there. But to host these teams, Dayton will still be very good with Ron Holmes coming back. St. Bonaventure, this is crazy, Kyle. And we'll talk more about this when we preview the Atlantic 10. St. Bonaventure might have some depth next year. They might have a legit 9-man rotation that is going to be a far cry from the Ironman 5 that they had to play with all their seniors that they didn't have last year, which is why they had to retool. And then to get Ryan Odom, who I think this team could certainly win the conference in VCU, to get his team at home and not have to go down and play the Siegel Center is big. Away opponents, Davidson not going to be as good. Actually, some news today, Sam Menenga is apparently going to play professionally in Australia.
Wow.
And not return to Davidson next year, which is huge, being their focal point and big guy inside. But they're going to have to go to Duquesne. Still going to be very good next year. They lost some guys. They brought in some transfers, though. So Duquesne is still going to be very formidable. Fordham is going to be good once again. Keith Ergo's doing a great job there. We're going to see what Loyola's made of. I know they beat LaSalle last year, but they're bringing in some guys. They brought in a couple guys from the Ivy League. They had to bring in some other transfers too. And then, unfortunately, it's going to be a very down year for Richmond, who lost Tyler Burton, who lost Jason Nelson, who's actually going like 10 minutes down the street to VCU. Kind of some dirty business there, I guess. I don't know. Just doesn't really know. When you transfer in conference to a school 10 minutes down the street, it makes me think something.
That's weird. That'd be like someone, on a very, very smaller scale, someone transferring from North Carolina to Duke or vice versa.
Yeah. Or me transferring from LaSalle to Temple.
Yeah, who would ever do that?
Yeah, guess it all works out. But I think it's pretty favorable draw for LaSalle. They get some of the best teams in the conference at home. Of course, last year they had to go play at all these places. And then I think they're double opponents. They did well against Rhode Island, did pretty well against UMass. We're competitive with GW, who I don't think is going to be as good this year. I think it's a good draw for the Explorers. I really do.
Definitely. Even as I was reading them off, just thinking about going to some of the places that are going to be coming to Tom Gola, talk about Dayton, Bonaventure, St. Louis to a lesser extent, but they're going to be good probably. And VCU, those are really tough places to play. So to be able to host them is definitely a benefit for LaSalle. So good on them. Not that they had anything to do with that, but will be helpful for them once the season comes. All right. To the Hawks now. Not as favorable, but definitely an interesting schedule. So we're going to read this off here. First, the home and away opponents. You've got Duquesne, Loyola Chicago, St. Louis, and of course the Explorers. Home teams, they're going to be hosting Davidson, Dayton, Fordham, George Mason, and George Washington. And they will be traveling to Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Richmond, the Bonnies, and VCU. So those are some tough road trips. Going up to Bonaventure, as we've talked about on the show, not easy. Siegel Center is maybe one of the hardest places to play in the country. It's up there. Rhode Island won't be good, like we talked about, and UMass we'll see. Definitely good on them that they're going to be hosting Dayton, Fordham too, especially, but not as favorable of a draw for St. Joe's as LaSalle got.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not nearly as good. You gotta play Duquesne twice. Got to play St. Louis twice. Who St. Louis won't be as good. I don't think Yuri Collins is coming back. I can fact check
I
myself.
don't think he is.
They've had to
Fact check
kind of
that, I don't.
retool a little bit as he leaves. But that away, I look at some of those away games and it's like, okay, we have Rhode Island and Richmond, who you shouldn't have a problem with, and I think this team can certainly beat UMass as well.
Mm-hmm.
But having to go to Bonaventure and VCU, Bonnie's going to be very experienced. VCU with a damn good coach, Ryan Odom, who I can't say enough good things about, and even the roster he's put together is very good. So, kind of a mix here because I see some gimme games in the away slate, but also see two very, very tough road games as well. Home a little bit more favorable, I guess. Mason with Tony Skinn in year one, they should beat GW. Like I said, they're not going to be as good because they couldn't really score outside of James Bishop and Brendan Adams. They now lose Brendan Adams. Noel Brown leaves, Hunter Deans at LSU, which shocked me when I saw that. And then to get Dayton at home as well is big. They don't have to go to UD Arena and play them. And Fordham's going to be very good. Again, I see, both sides here. Like there's definitely very, very winnable games that I'll be disappointed if St. Joe's drops. There's some tough games here, especially on the road as well. So I'm really excited to watch this team. Experience with some really good and talented freshmen coming in. I think it's going to be a really interesting team in the A10 that can certainly be a wild card. But we're going to see what they're made of because there is some, having to play Duquesne twice. And then I'm looking at having to go up to Ole in New York to play Mark Schmidt and the Bonnies, and then having to go play Ryan Odom and VCU. That are certainly going to be tough games. So we're going to see what this team's made of. But I think they're good enough to make some noise in the A10. But it's not going to be easy because when we compare these schedules, St. Joe's definitely got the shorter end of the stick than what's down there.
Yes. And I don't think by a ton. I'm not going to sit here and say St. Joe's is the hardest schedule you've ever seen because they don't. Like you said, definitely some gimme games on the road, I think. And I think Massachusetts, I think can be incorporated in that. I think with the talent of St. Joe's this year, I think that should be a game absolutely they should win. But there are definitely games that will be tough, like Bonaventure, VCU, even going to Loyola Chicago, not an easy place to play. But I'm very excited for the A10. This is going to be a really, really fun year for the conference. I think it's wide open. I think it's pretty wide open. Mm-hmm. I think St. Joe's could be up there. LaSalle, maybe not as much, but excited to see what they can do. And year two of Fran Dunphy. So to be determined for the A10. All right. A couple player news here to round out the show, the pod. Unfortunately, Villanova forward Trey Patterson will be having surgery again, this time to repair a torn labrum. He is out indefinitely. Having a surgery this, I don't want to say it's late in the offseason. We're probably about halfway through the offseason, I'd say. You would obviously ideally want to have something like this a couple months ago. So it's unfortunate. I don't know exactly when he tore it though, so that's not I can say, it was a season injury, but underwent surgery for the torn right labrum. Also had arthroscopic knee surgery on both hips in May, so maybe that's why he was recovering from that. Also had surgery for a sports hernia in August of last year. So unfortunately, Trey Patterson's been banged up. this one is another roadblock for him. Hopefully he can recover from it, and we're pulling for him, obviously. But Cope, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's real unfortunate. When I was reading the press release that Nova put out, Kyle Neptune even said, like, I've never seen a guy had this many major surgeries in less than a year. We're at 11 months now
Yeah.
since at that sports hernia surgery, and this is his third major operation he's going to have. So I think we're looking at a definite red shirt here. Now I give him credit because even with the sports hernia surgery in August of last year, like he still played earlier in the year, and to miss that valuable time with the ramp up to the season and still be able to play, give him credit for doing that. But yeah, these injuries are real unfortunate. And with all the transfers that they brought in, especially with Lance Ware giving them, a true five now that they can play behind Eric Dixon or with them, I think it would probably be in his best interest to redshirt here, especially like, the labrums in his shooting shoulder, and with both these surgeries here, with the surgeries on his hips you mentioned, and then this, like, who knows when he'll be back to 100% and will be able to be back on the court. And even if that's sometime this season, like he's going to need time to ramp himself back up in a really, really good Big East, if that's even the case. So I think you're looking at a red shirt here. He was in 22 games last season, averaged just under 7 minutes a game. So, he's definitely a reserve guy. It's not gonna hurt them or do him in that he's not out there. But a guy that can step in, defend a little bit, and knock down a shot for you here and there. So I would think we're looking at a red shirt here. Been a guy that's played sparingly the 3 years he's been at Villanova. But me, like, you got to red shirt yourself, man. You got to take care of your health, because this is, I don't even know. I can't even think of an athlete, anybody that I like that's had this many operations in a year. So and to have to recover from hip surgeries and then be put in the sling. Who knows when he'll be able to do any type of activity? And then when we talk about John Shackleton and we had Tommy on and we talk about their strength and conditioning program, like he's going to have to get back in the gym and get his body right again. So who knows how that long is going to take. So Godspeed, brother. That sounds horrible, but Neptune was saying how he's had a good attitude throughout the process. He's handled it as well as I guess he could have. I don't know how you're supposed to handle all this, but I'm thinking a red shirt here. Take your time, and we'll see you when you're back healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the red shirt's the only course of action here. You gotta get your body right. Not that not that he's to blame for these injuries. Obviously,
No,
like
not
these
at all.
things are very freaky, especially with athletes. But it's unfortunate. But you got to take care of yourself. And the only other athletes really I can think of that have something like this. I mean, obviously Greg Oden was extremely injury prone his career in Portland. And then more recently, Lonzo Ball. I mean, he's not going to end up playing for about 3 years by the time he comes back for the 2024-25 season, because the Bulls used the medical hardship on him. I believe that was announced today, actually, of this recording. But those are only people I can think of that have something like this, where just injury after injury and you can't get back out there.
I
And
can think maybe Gronk.
yeah,
Like I know
maybe.
he had a play where he tore his ACL. He blew out his knee, and I think he broke his forearm on the same play or something like that. And he might have had a concussion in there too. Like that's the only thing I can think of. I mean, I
Yeah,
feel for this guy, man. I mean, that is
yeah,
awful.
I feel really, really bad.
Yeah.
So Trey, we are pulling for you. We are hoping that you kick this recovery's ass, you come back next season, and you're better than ever. But definitely make sure you take care of yourself. And we'll see you out there next year. So that's pretty much all we got here on Big Five Pod episode number 53, excuse me. Cope, any final thoughts before we sign off?
Yeah, no episode next week. Your boy's heading to Mexico. I got a flight real early in the morning on Saturday. I'm gonna take a vacation, take a couple days before
Well
I start to
deserved.
get locked into college hoops. Should be a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm going to Puerto Vallarta on the Pacific coast of Mexico. I will be out of office, and we will be back. We'll be back up and running to your regularly scheduled programming in 2 weeks.
There we go. Enjoy it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I know you guys take a vacation about this time every year. So very, very excited to get to do that. Definitely enjoy it. Go enjoy some Mexican beaches and cuisine and enjoy it. It'll be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. For me, don't really know what I got. The heyday, the Clown Ballers, we're heading to the championship, as I mentioned, top of the episode here. Some good wins today. It's next Thursday, so with you being out, we will not know. You guys will not know the result of this until a couple weeks from now, if you were following, which I'm sure you weren't. But other than that, I mean, I think we're all good. Union getting ready for the Leagues Cup here. So definitely make sure to tune into that. It's an interesting tournament that MLS is starting this year. Should be fun though. Messi's making his debut in this tournament, so definitely keep an eye on that. I believe a week from Friday, when this comes out. And baseball's back after the All-Star break. I'm going to the game the day of this being released on Friday. Dodgers.
By the way, can you tell everybody, because you love telling everyone how the Mets swept the Phillies late May and early June. Would you like to tell them how they did in the month of June, as I told you they would?
See, here's the thing about this, because the last few Junes, now I know June 2020 they didn't play because of COVID. June 21, June 22, pretty good. I think above 500. June of 19, they would have made the playoffs if they didn't swoon. I think they were 10-18 in that month. In June of 2023, the New York Mets went 7-19. That would be the second worst record in all of baseball in that span, behind the Oakland Athletics, who were I'm sorry, I think was it the Royals? I think it was the Royals.
Yeah, the A's won more games in June.
It was the Kansas City Royals, who are also an abysmal baseball organization, who I'm actually seeing with my girlfriend and her family. They're Yankees fans, so we're seeing that next week. The Royals coming to town, but they're an abysmal organization. They went 6-20, the only team worse than the Mets in the month of June. The Mets started June, I believe it was one game up. They beat the Phillies on June 1st for the sweep, obviously, which I was bragging about on here. And then they proceeded to lose 19 of the next 25 games. So that was fun, and I'm definitely not mad about it. But they did rip off 6 straight to start July before losing the last 1 or 2. So we'll see. They're 6 games under right now, 42-48, heading into the second half of the year. They've got some work to do. They're 6.5 out of the wild card. I'm not saying it's not possible. Crazy things have happened, like a team blowing a 7-game lead in the division with 17 games left to play. I know about that too. So we'll see. We're hoping for some good baseball down the stretch here. Obviously, we can't talk about any Big 5 basketball games happening. So it's baseball season, though I'm a huge baseball fan anyway, so it's fine. And then soon enough, it'll be Jets training camp. And that'll be something to talk
Hard
about.
Knocks.
Hard Knocks, yes. Jets, and the other thing, Jets are on Hard Knocks. Obviously, you see the in-season poster behind me when I worked on that at NFL Films. So very excited for my NFL Films friends to be able to work with the Jets on this Hard Knocks. It's going to be a lot of fun, even though they didn't want it. But the Jets meaning, not NFL Films, obviously. But it will be fun, Cope. It will be a lot of fun. I'm very excited to see my team on Hard Knocks. When I have HBO, I did not have HBO back in 2009 or 2010 when they were on it. So yeah. And with that being said, thank you guys so much of course, for tuning in to the Big 5 Pod. We very much appreciate your love and support, even in these what's the word I'm looking for? Not very action-filled times. But if you want to keep tuning into things, of course, make sure you like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and Twitter, especially for updates on anything at Big 5 Pod. And make sure, of course, you listen to our audio-only versions on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And with that being said, Cope, you enjoy your vacation in Mexico. We will see you in a couple weeks, and we will see all of you in a couple of weeks. Till then.